all of these initiatives to make everything convenient are about just a couple of things. Consumption is one of them, and control is the other. So if we're busy consuming, it's very easy for the people at the top to have the ultimate control, and that's what they want. For me, there was a silver lining in COVID, and that was that it woke many people up. I think, the era of the United States being the free beacon that it was is over. I hope that we can reclaim it, but to think that it is the freest place in the world is just delusional.
Defending non-KYC Bitcoin is actually the only thing that matters in Bitcoin right now. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so
hello and welcome to another great episode of You're the Voice. I'm Efrat. I'm here with you in Nashville, of all places, in Nashville, Tennessee, at Bitcoin Nashville Conference, and I'm so happy to be sitting here with my friend Michelle Weekley.
I'm so happy to be here. It's great to see you, and of course all of our Bitcoin friends, and finally we get to talk.
I know. I've been wanting this to happen for a while, but everything happens in the right timing, so I'm sure this is the right time for us. And I've started following you, Michelle, not too long ago, I think in the past year or so, but you know how it is when you discover a Bitcoiner that is also a true freedom fighter and a truthful person that is also courageous enough to speak out
or domino
against something or just to show the light on the truth. I am attracted to that straight away. So I was to you, and we'll dig deeper about what you do and why I was so attracted to you. But thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for having me, and right back at you. I only joined Twitter after Elon bought it.
Really?
So I have not been there that long, and I am really glad to have found my people by speaking up.
Exactly.
You don't make friends with everyone, but you find the right people, and I'm really glad you're one of them.
Yeah, me too. So just for my audience that don't know you, I'll do a quick intro and then we'll start talking. Michelle Weekley has a background in computer science and is the director of product development at Byte Federal, one of the first Bitcoin ATM companies. Prior to that, she spent 10 plus years working with tech startups in the startup mafia I love it. I was in the startup mafia as well, and 2 years in Dubai and China working in foreign direct investment. And we'll talk more about what that is. She's now a free speech advocate and global corruption whistleblower. Love it. Okay. More about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get to do what you do in life?
Sure. So I was actually born in the Midwest. I have roots in the Midwest. We moved to the East Coast when I was still pretty young, but I spent most of my life actually in DC. I was in DC for 12 years. And I worked in the tech sector there. And I ended up here because I've always sort of just gone against the grain. Like whatever everyone was doing, I was never very interested in doing. So, I did my time kind of working in startups and started to see some things that I didn't like. And the natural path for everyone was to go to Silicon Valley. And I didn't want to do that.
Why?
I didn't want to live in California.
Okay.
This was, almost 10 years ago. So it was maybe not as it is now, but it still didn't feel like the right thing. Mm-hmm. And I also wanted out of tech, kind of. So this time period is when they were starting to commodify data. And so since I had a background in computer science, I knew that. And I worked for an ISP. And then I went and got...
For people who don't understand tech, just to explain to them what commodifying data means.
Yeah, so...
I understand the trend.
So data is like the new oil. This is a saying that has emerged. And what that means is really just how valuable data is. So our data is being sold, all of our data. It's not something that has been going on forever. People forget that our smartphones are new.
Yep.
The internet is new.
That's right.
We are similar ages, so I think we grew up in a similar fashion. I mean, when I was a kid, you played in the street, and you came home when the lights and the street lights went off.
That's right.
This doesn't exist anymore. So I was kind of nerdy. I grew up coding. My mom is actually a QA engineer. She does software testing. So I ended up with a very technical job. Well, data is the new oil. So the commodification of data is basically this concept that your data is the most valuable thing out there. And so what has happened slowly over time, or quickly, when something happens over 10 years, it's not that slow. But all of the products that we're using have been designed to extract as much data from you as possible. And so I saw that in the roles that I had. That concept has driven so many second and third layer effects, because when you're designing a product and your goal is not consumer oriented, what is best for the person who's using this product, that's not the goal. The actual goal is to acquire as much data from them as possible. So you design things differently. I kind of knew that from day one, because I got a tour at my job. And it was like one of these fun jobs. We were funded by Facebook and Amazon. And I thought, okay, this is gonna be fun. This is not a nerdy job, this is a fun job. And then we walk past, there's this server room, and everyone's like, well, nobody goes in there. That's the serious place. That's where we actually make our money. And it was in that moment, I've written about this, actually, I'd like to write more about it. That moment just changed everything, so I had lots of fun, and we designed products.
I wanna hold. So you think that server room is where data was collected and then sent back to
Amazon, actually, because we had a
that's
major
where
investment.
we're trading basically your information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I worked for a company called Living Social, which was one of these deals companies. We were second to the market behind Groupon, but we were funded by Amazon, and we were friends with Facebook. So there were all of these connections. And it was interesting. It was interesting to watch, but I knew that was driving Silicon Valley. So I didn't want to go get deeper into it. I wanted out of it entirely. And so I went to Dubai.
You're the Voice is brought to you by Trezor, the original Bitcoin hardware wallet company pioneering the development of self-custody for crypto assets since 2013, empowering individuals with an open-source device, enabling beginners and experts to easily and securely hold their coins. I find my Trezor super easy to use and recommend it to my friends and family. Enjoy my 5% discount on Trezor products by clicking the link in the show notes and using the code FLAT.
Okay. How did you find Dubai? Why Dubai?
Yeah. Dubai, I had actually a friend from, grade school, really, who we had connected on Facebook, and they were living in Abu Dhabi. And I thought, I don't know where that is. I had done a fair amount of traveling, but I'd never been to Asia or the Middle East. And I really wanted to go there. So I thought, well, here's a place that I now have on the map. Let me get there. I'm halfway to Asia. I'll figure out how to get to Asia. So I went to visit my friend, and I just stayed. I canceled my return flight like 3 times, and then eventually went back to DC and sorted everything out so that I could go live in Dubai. And that started the next chapter.
And then did you work in Dubai?
I worked a little bit at a startup incubator. And so, this startup mafia, they're all connected. There was a company over there called Kareem, and they wanted to be acquired by Uber. Well, a lot of people from Living Social had gone to Uber, and so I was very familiar with the product models. So I worked with them for a little while. They did ultimately get acquired by Uber.
Right.
But it was during that time that I ended up being recruited into foreign direct investment, and that is how I ended up here.
So then, okay, hold on. Before we go there, this is good. I just want to recap something. During all those different positions with all the different companies, you were always doing product work, so product development work?
Not necessarily. So, in a startup, you do a lot of different roles. So I had a lot of operations roles, and I would interface with like marketing or the dev teams, and I served in kind of a product role. But because I understood sort of the backside of what was being built, I always got pulled into the technical sides of it, which was great for me. It gave me a lot of visibility that other people didn't have. So, it's great to know how it all works, but sometimes ignorance is bliss. I mean, I was not having the most fun.
I understand. Okay, let's keep going with then from Dubai to the
foreign direct investment.
Is it government? Is it a government?
It's not technically a government agency. So FDI, and I didn't know any of this. A foreign direct investment is basically economic development at the highest level. So it's largely sovereign, country to country. Major cities, major corporations are all involved in this sort of chess game at the top. And FDI is the ecosystem that surrounds the World Economic Forum. It is. And this is nothing, I knew
so
nothing.
You have a community in every country, or how does it work? Or is it a global organization?
No, it's a global industry. And it's primarily made up of government entities. You have a lot of consulting companies, I was working for a consulting company.
So like the Accentures, the Deloittes, these kind of?
They're involved. So it's not exclusively what they do. There's a lot of these little boutique consulting companies. You've never heard the name of them, but they're managing millions, billions of dollars of flow of money.
From
investment.
Who?
You have special economic zones that are set up in different countries, so you maybe have heard of these.
Yes.
And a lot of the money comes in and out of those. So deals get made whether it's with a city or a state, with large businesses that are doing international business. And the consulting companies sort of, in a way, help to manage the flow of money, who gets the grants.
But is it the state money or the city's money?
It's all of it.
Or it's global money that comes from other sources?
It's all of it.
All of it?
It's all of it. It's a lot of money, and there's a lot of deals that are done. It's crazy. It's crazy how it's all sort of manufactured. There's a lot of, bribery and corruption, but it's not done super blatantly, right? I mean, there's this facade, and you have to participate in it. Right? Yeah. You go along with the lies.
How did they reach you?
I was visiting a friend who was speaking at a conference, and he was doing business with someone else who just, I met them and they recruited me. They like charismatic people who are smart and who they think will go along with the flow. At the time, I was excited to be in this new part of the world. I didn't really know my way around. So I wasn't as maybe challenging as most people see me now.
Yeah, same.
Or as I would have been in DC,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Because you have the lay of the land, you're confident. I'd never heard of I didn't know what foreign direct investment was, right? So I was just like, wow, I get this big fancy job. I've made it. I had an unchecked expense account. I'm going all over. You think that you've succeeded. And I'd actually never even heard of the World Economic Forum. And suddenly I'm surrounded by people. It's their entire goal to get to this event. I mean, that is their life.
The FDI people want to get to the Davos event.
Absolutely. In fact, there is a sort of B or C level event called the World Forum for Foreign Direct Investment. And
they made one for
it's like if you can't get invited to Davos, you go to this one. So I attended that several times.
Where is it?
It's somewhere different every year. We were in Shanghai and San Diego, the two that I attended.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But it has overlaps with
a lot
with the WEF Davos.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what happens? They start recruiting you, and what kind of job do you get?
So I believe that my title was global director of marketing.
Okay.
They give you a big fancy title because they want you to be important, right? Yeah. And I think the first red flag when I accepted that job was they wrote a bio and they put out a press release. There were all of these lies in the bio. like
About you?
about me,
Okay.
saying that I had advanced degrees, saying that I had been involved with these organizations in Dubai, like advancing women in tech, and just things that weren't actually true. You know what I mean? Like, I barely got a degree. And so I went to the marketing and I said, this isn't true.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, it makes you look better, so it makes us look better. Just sort of, close the door on that one.
And people should know that this is oftentimes how things work.
Yeah.
My background is in marketing and
Yeah.
PR, and I have never agreed to communicate lies, like outright lies. But I know that many marketeers, would not care so much.
Right. They weren't happy with me asking the questions, My mom called me and she was like, what is this? This is not true. I was like, I know. I mean, I asked them, I tried to have it corrected, but they didn't care. In fact, they're watching you now because they want to make sure, are you going to be questioning constantly? And this became the theme of the whole time that I spent in this role was your willingness to keep your mouth shut about how do these things work? Why did they get that grant? Here's a $300 million grant. And
It's not small money.
It's not at all. And so it's all facilitated based on people's willingness to not speak up. And so I didn't for a period of time. I was young. I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, you call?
It takes time until you realize what's happening around you.
And even once you've got it figured out, it's like, well, is there a hotline to call or something? And
Exactly.
there's not.
What do I do?
Of course,
Who
right.
do I speak to?
Yeah. And how do I also, you have to get over the challenge of telling everyone in your life that you've participated in this.
Yes.
Which I think keeps a lot of people quiet. It took me several years to gain the confidence and sort my life out to a place where I felt comfortable talking about all of it. So
what was the kind of corruption that you were exposed to? I mean, you don't need to obviously mention things that are too sensitive, but like the type of business that you were part of or that the organization is a part of.
Yeah, I will say, if anyone has not heard of the Panama Papers, look that up. That's all true. One thing that's really interesting is a story that I tell a lot is we toured the ghost cities in China in 2016. So again, it's a great example of keeping your mouth shut. So we're there, we go to Beijing, you take a helicopter out, we spent 3 days like touring these towns that are completely empty. And they're telling us that
They're new towns?
Yeah, like entire developments. And so we were told at one time, this development was 30% occupied. There was no one there, not a single person there. But you don't call them out, you don't say anything, you just keep your mouth shut and you go home and you take your bonus. And that's how it all works. So this was 2016 before the collapse.
And they get
of
the
everything.
grants, these kind of projects?
So the developers in China, so we had a client that was one of the largest land developers in China. So they're getting money from the Chinese government and different economic development initiatives. And they're kind of whining and dining us. And then we provide data and research that fits their narrative. So the research is all backfilled. So here's the goal, here's the end goal.
Oh, damn.
And then here's a check. Now give us the supporting evidence.
Far out.
It's wild.
Because then you have all the consultancy arms that you can operate in order to provide all that data and information that will fit what they need.
Whatever they want will be provided. And, if we hadn't done it, if I had spoken up and somehow convinced my entire company that this was wrong and we should stop, well, there's just another one, and here's another one. They're popping up. There's so much money. Well, consulting companies to provide the information that, sometimes there's some legitimate research that's done, but it's, if you've ever taken a statistics class, data is very easy to manipulate. So whatever they want is what you provide.
And if they wouldn't get that deliverable from you, what does it mean for their project? They don't get funding? They rely on your
ultimately,
work?
it would be great if that was the consequence. But the way that it really works is they go find a different consulting company that gives them what they want.
Okay.
And there's no shortage of those. So
they get the money anyway. But okay, I get it. But they still need that stamp from a consultancy company in order to go ahead with their project.
generally.
Okay.
So there's these.
And those projects, you gave the example of the China's ghost towns. Are there many like these? Like, is it real estate only, or in
It's
other
not only
topics?
real estate.
Okay.
You know, there's large economic development incentives that are granted, and sometimes that money does get filtered down to local communities and does good things. I think the more local economic development is, the better, because you have people, you know, actually within their own communities. But the opposite is also true. So the higher up you get, the more disconnected from the community that you are, the more corruption there is, you know, the more you're talking bigger money. And so there's a lot at stake.
So there's one, it's just what you're saying just makes me think. There is one project that I've been covering in my writing, the Line project. Have you heard of that?
In Saudi.
In Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah.
This amazingly ambitious, I would say, project of occupying a city that will be built as a line.
Right.
That would be sustainable, green, all this bullshit.
It checks all the boxes.
Yes.
So they make those decisions
But essentially, it
first.
looks like the you know, what's the Netflix?
The Black Mirror. It's a Black Mirror
it's
episode.
It's a Black Mirror for sure, but it's also, you know, the series about the train that doesn't stop. I forget the name of it.
No, I don't know this one.
Oh, that's amazing. So they all live in a train, and the train has to keep going, and it doesn't stop.
Okay.
And they literally live in a train.
Okay.
And there are like
cars.
Different cars in the
Yes,
train.
this is what they're doing. There's zones in the line,
Yes.
right? And you're supposed to be within X distance, and so it's a pod. Live in the pod, eat the box.
Exactly, and I covered it under my section of the 15-minute cities because this is what it is. It's like you'll have everything, you'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. And
exactly.
That's the WEF vision. Okay, so a project like that, for example.
Right.
That's an example of some of the projects you've seen?
Well, I think the Ghost Cities was the largest thing that I saw, but that is the level at which this is happening. You know, all of these huge things that we're seeing, the initiatives that are being driven, the decisions that are happening, they're happening up at that level, and then they sort of trickle down, right?
Okay, so let me be the devil's advocate for a second. So what if we check and see that that's actually a pretty good project? I mean, people are going to benefit from it. So what's your problem? Why the objection?
Right.
What is corrupt there?
I don't know exactly what's corrupt, right? And there is a desire for some of these things. There's people that want everything convenient. They want to live in the 15-minute cities. And so if there's demand for that, why not meet it? Of course, it's being encouraged, and we have to ask ourselves why. You get caught up in the convenience and the ease, and it's very easy to just be a consumer and buy the things and keep everything very easy. But when you're consuming endlessly, it's not very fulfilling, right?
What do you find when you stop and ask the questions? Why?
Exactly.
Why is this happening? What happens then?
I think that you find there's no happiness in it. You find that consumerism is super empty, right? There's nothing meaningful about just consuming. And ultimately, like this, all of these initiatives to make everything convenient are about just a couple of things. Consumption is one of them, and control is the other. So if we're busy consuming, it's very easy for the people at the top to have the ultimate control, and that's what they want.
And then how does this relate to your journey into Bitcoin? Because I think that's where we're meeting those two worlds,
how
right?
we got here. Yeah. So the universe aligned, and I was sitting in Cartagena, Colombia in 2017, and I didn't want to be there. I was at a free trade zone conference. So I'm sitting in a corner, and this young Russian kid sits down next to me, and we're talking about some tech stuff. He clearly didn't want to be there either. He's like, well, have you heard about, Bitcoin? And I'm like, actually, yeah. When's the first time you ignored Bitcoin? So I ignored Bitcoin in DC in 2011. Had some friends using
early
it.
on,
But I ignored it. And I thought, that's interesting. And I started Googling. There was still, the internet hadn't been as co-opted as it is now. It's insane. I set up a Google alert, and I just started reading everything that I could. And I understood the technical side of it very quickly. So I got into Bitcoin, and that ultimately allowed me to get out of working in foreign direct investment and So in 2018, I moved back to the States and kind of retired from all of that and thought, now what do I do with my life?
Okay.
It took some time to go, from there to here where we are now. I spent a couple of years trying to talk to people about what I'd seen, but nobody wanted to listen, right? I just sounded like a crazy person. I came back to the US and I was like, everything on the TV is propaganda. Like, you guys, this is crazy.
That was your wake-up call,
It
huh?
really was. I think the period of time in particular, a lot changed. And you have this like frogs in the boiling water effect, and I wasn't in the water. So I came back and so much had changed and you weren't allowed to ask any questions. 2016 was like a really hot time, and I wasn't in the States during the time. So I'm just asking questions, there were so many things you weren't allowed to talk about. So of course I'm like, I'm going to talk about them. Yeah,
sure.
but also, how did this happen? I thought we lived in the freest country in the world. In Dubai, okay, I keep my mouth shut and I behave. But I'm in America. Can I not speak about anything that I want? Well, apparently not anymore. So I didn't know. I was honestly really alone for a while. And COVID, for me, there was a silver lining in COVID, and that was that it woke many people up.
Yes.
So I had some friends and former colleagues in China. I saw what was happening there, and I just knew. I said, it's coming here. And everyone said, no way. And one of my friends in China actually fled to Italy, and it went to Italy. The lockdowns went to Italy, and I said, of course it is coming here. And again, no way. And then Canada, and then the United States. And so the silver lining for me in that is a lot of people came back and said, wait, what did you say? Now they were ready to listen and to hear these stories, and
So you had some people to talk to, new people that would be willing to listen.
Yeah.
And how was the COVID period for you?
Well, I got really lucky because I was in Florida.
Okay.
So it was not too bad.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you were watching everything else.
I was, and it was wild to watch. It confirmed, when I came back to the States in 2018, I had these wild thoughts. People get angry when I say, in some ways, the U.S., it's as bad as China, but the thing is, at least China is honest about its propaganda. We're here in the U.S. and they're pretending this is real media. Get out of here. This is propaganda. And more people are starting to see that.
Yeah.
But, a few years ago, that was let's not talk about that, And again, I will always go back to this. At least they're honest about it. And that's not to say they're honest about everything. Of course not. There's no delusion of that.
Sure.
But the fact that the media is state-sponsored, we know that. That's a fact. So, this is what bothers me in the United States, is that there's this facade that this is real information, and it's not.
What else got clarified or verified for you during COVID?
Well, it challenged a lot of my beliefs because, I had spent time in Dubai, and when you're in Dubai, you get a lot of questions about, well, isn't it, authoritarian and these things. I'm like, well, I've never felt safer anywhere. There's pros and cons everywhere globally. I come back to the US, it's in deterioration. So, it really, for me, brought up, what is freedom? Am I more free here, where I actually feel sort of scared a lot of places? I can't leave my purse or my things sitting somewhere and use the restroom. I have to keep my things with me. There's all these little things that we don't really think about. And so how do you arrange those pieces to have the utmost freedom? And it's complex, obviously, and there's trade-offs everywhere with everything. But I think, the error of the United States being the free beacon that it was is over. I hope that we can reclaim it. But to think that it is the freest place in the world is just delusional at this point.
I think both you and I have experienced coming from a very successful and socially accepting community around us. And then when COVID happened and we were not willing to go along and to participate in all the different experiments they were running on us, whether it's health experiment or social experiment or whatever, then we had to experience some outcasting or
Absolutely.
or discrimination at points, right? And that to me showed in many cases the true face of society and of how easy it is to manipulate human beings and how easy it is to get human beings to turn against each other.
It was wild.
Yeah, it was wild. And so what were the prices that you had to pay for standing your ground and not taking part in all this crazy jungle?
Well, I got really lucky in that I had just been spit out of the time in foreign direct investment, and I wasn't interested in being involved in that anymore. So I was already in a weird transitional place in my life. I kind of just lost my career, so I didn't have to lose my career.
Yeah.
I got very lucky in that sense, but I was working for myself as a consultant, and so I didn't have an employer, but I had clients. And a lot of my clients would not have been happy if I had been running my mouth. So I ultimately chose to wind that down and run my mouth instead, because there were a couple of like retail clients that I had and helped them prop up like e-commerce businesses during COVID, and I was doing a lot of like marketing business development. And if you want to do that, you know, you have to
play the game, play along.
Yeah, you have to play along. So there was like one place, for example, and when I went there and I met with them, I wore a mask.
Okay.
And I hate it. I wish that I hadn't, but I did. You know, we have to make all of these decisions. So I didn't lose that much, and I'm really thankful for that. But I have nothing but empathy for, I know that people lost everything. And I understand the feeling of alienation because, you know, I had been through that coming back from being abroad and trying to like be honest about what was going on. And so I just tried to find those people that were losing things and wanted to be honest and not go along with all of it and like support them and bring them in and, you know, just whatever I could to support those people. I was just sort of hiding away in Florida.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, it was like watching an episode of Black Mirror, you know, but in real life.
Wow.
Like I'm on my phone and everything that happened in China, you would just follow it and eventually it would come here. And I would try to say, you know, like, here's what's happening. It's going to come here. And again, people just thought, no way. And I vowed during that time, I vowed to stop saying that could never happen here. Because look at what they did.
Sure.
Right? And so we have to be careful about this. You try to maintain your mental health. And so you want to have some hope in something and some kind of optimism. So I try never to say that would never happen, but sometimes I do because it's comforting, right? Like, oh, they won't go that far.
Yeah, we learn time and time again that they break that.
They will.
Yeah, they will. And then when did you start working for a
Federal.
company? Byte Federal.
Yeah, Byte Federal. It's been, so June of last year. It's been like 14 months, I think. They're based in Southwest Florida, where I am, and I got really fortunate enough to just meet them. I kind of like ran into them. I got online after Elon Musk bought Twitter, turned X. I thought, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get on there. I'm just going to talk. I'm going to tell everybody everything, you know? And so that, of course, brought people into my life. And so I started networking and getting more involved in like the social side of Bitcoin. I thought, this is the only thing I care about. At least these people are honest.
Yep.
And
well, most of them.
Yeah, most of them. Right. So yeah, it's grown, right? So now we have all kinds. But so I met them actually at a local meetup, and I had met with them a couple of times and ultimately agreed. So they're one of the first ATM companies. I think you said that, and I do digital product development. The past year I've spent doing like a redesign and rebrand on, we have a non-custodial wallet. Of course, now we have regulatory problems with that, so it's disheartening, but we're carrying on, and we also have a merchant solution. You might have seen online, actually, we did a gasoline transaction at a gas station in Florida. So again, you know, regulatory problems with that. They're really trying to crack down on things. There's been a very serious assault on the industry. You saw a lot of people leave the US market. We were fortunate enough to have kind of the backbone of the ATM business, and so we have the runway to fight for these products. And
but it's hard to innovate?
It's nearly impossible.
Really?
Yeah. So Choke Point 2.0 was very, very real. It started
What is that? Sorry.
So it's kind of used now as a catch-all phrase for the assault on the industry. I would say that the primary...
When it refers to what?
Like January 2023.
Okay.
They started. And I think the most effective tool that they have used is to debank the industry. So we've been through... I don't know, 100 banks.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
They wouldn't let you open a bank account for the business.
Yeah, we've lost business bank accounts, and then we had banking for different reasons. We had a business bank account, but we also had a partner bank, and they facilitated the on-ramp, so you could buy your Bitcoin. And we also had like a full banking, go bank yourself is actually one of our marketing slogans. Yeah. So we offered services to our retail customers. And they said, well, you can't do that anymore. We're not going to do that. There are a couple of players that survived that crackdown. So, you've got Cash App and Strike, and these are great products. But if there's only 2 or 3 that get grandfathered with the stamp of approval, then there's no innovation that's happening. I mean, they are innovating, and that is incredible. And I have nothing but for support for them. But if you're not approved, there's no innovation to be done. I mean, we are bigger than a lot of other people. We have a 10-person legal and compliance team because of the ATM business.
Yeah.
But you see some of these other companies that have left the market, and I completely understand why they left. Why would you take that risk? I mean, they're being very hostile and aggressive. So
where do you think this is going?
Well, I'm hoping that it changes in November.
Because of the election?
Because of the election, and I know that a lot of people think that that's comical. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that I have a lot of faith in the political system. I don't. I have none. But there is an aggressive, coordinated attack on the industry. And even if someone new comes in and doesn't fulfill any of their promises, if they get the current people out, it solves a lot of our problems. So that is my hope. And then it gives you 4 more years to build. And if we can outbuild their regulation, maybe we can get a little ahead. Long term, I don't know.
So what do you make of all these political statements that you hear these days about Bitcoin?
Yeah. Well, I understand not wanting Bitcoin to be political. I spent 12 years in DC vowing not to be involved in politics.
Yes,
I went to a Tea Party rally. I'm like, yeah, leave me alone, and I fled it. And now here we are, right, with some of the biggest names in politics speaking at the event, and we're cheering it on. But I think it was inevitable, right?
I mean, but that's, I'll stop you for a second because that's important to say. We're cheering it on just because we know it's good for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We don't give a F about the politicians.
I have no faith in the politics. I mean, look, if burning it all down was an option, I would light the match. But it's not, it's not socially acceptable to do this. If we're gonna play their games, you have to play the game, right? I mean, you and I know that. And so ultimately, there's nothing more political than defunding the state, which is what we're trying to do. So I think it's naive to say, just leave politics out of it. There's this idea, it's not an idea, it's a truth. The truth is that the Bitcoin protocol will survive.
Yes.
But we, as people, are citizens of the country that we were born in. Little leniency there, but we're citizens somewhere. And so long as we are citizens, we are subject to the laws and the rules and the regulations of the country where we live. And if we don't participate in the framework of those rules and regulations, other people will. And those people might hate us. In fact, generally they do. So this apathy of I don't want to be involved, I get it. I don't really want to be involved either. But I also don't want to be subject to regulation created by someone that hates me.
Yeah, I'm with you 1,000%, and you sound exactly like my dad. Because that's what he says to me always when we get to that point in the conversation. But my problem is that in Israel at the moment, I am a citizen of Israel. I'm also a citizen of Australia, but I don't live there.
Yeah.
In Israel, there is no one I can vote for, and there is no one that will actually change anything.
Yeah.
They're all working together in cahoots to hurt the citizens or take care of their own interests. So what you're saying is 100% right. I think it's valid when you actually find a politician or you can influence by lobbying or whatever, politicians that are willing to listen and you can do something with them, great. Try and educate them. Try and make them work for you, which is what they're actually supposed to do.
Sure.
the public servants, you know, it's crazy. But when you're in countries that are so corrupt that you really have no one to work with, then I think the options that you're left with are either to live there and not participate in the political sphere, or to leave the country and try and build a new future if you can. I don't know.
Well, so I agree. And the one thing I'll say is I have an interesting perspective on leaving. We cannot participate or we can leave. Where do you go?
You're right. Not everyone has a place to go.
Well, no. Say you can go anywhere in the world.
I mean, you can go to Florida. You can
Sure, but if you come to Florida and we don't fight to save it in Florida and we lose the United States to this same concept, which I think there's a significant...
I agree.
A very significant argument that it's already been lost. They're all already working together. And if I'm being really honest, do I think that that's likely? Yeah. But at the same time, if there's anywhere that can be saved, if there's any last shot,
I agree.
Because
sure.
So the States turns into Australia. The States turns into, I mean, we literally just had Canada, all these places. Okay, so where do we go? Fine, I left, I went to Dubai.
El Salvador, but like Samson Mao told me when I interviewed him, he said, yeah, sure, all Bitcoiners can go to El Salvador and then the nuke El Salvador and we'll dead. You know?
Well, also, I mean...
No, we wouldn't be doing but I mean, theoretically, it's possible.
Right.
It's very hard. You're right. And I think the States is one of our last hopes.
Yeah, I believe that. I think...
And the Second Amendment here is also an important part of it, right?
It is. It's very strong. And so, I think we all hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, there's that. We have not yet been disarmed. I mean, we won't be disarmed. I live in Florida.
I think the psychological effect of it is enough to deter the government from hurting.
I just posted last night, the timeline of Venezuela, and I circled the disarming of citizens because you saw...
They've done it in Israel now, and they've done it before October 7th. They disarmed a lot of the villages that got massacred during
There you go. So one of our, our lead developer is from Venezuela, and he has already lived through this. And so to hear his perspective is very eye-opening and grounding for me. So I had dinner with him last night, and we're talking, and here's what he thinks is going to happen. And you sure hope that that is not what's happening, but it's hard to tell someone who's already lived through it, no, you're wrong. So there's a timeline. Like Venezuela went from one of the wealthiest countries in the hemisphere, very successful. I think it was 20 years. And if you look at that timeline
to now.
Yeah, to complete hyperinflation, total communism, just absolute, we're not fleeing to Venezuela. They came here. And now they're all saying, look, listen, wake up. It's happening here. I think it's very ignorant to tell those people, no, you're wrong. Same thing with refugees from China who lived through the color revolution. I have several friends who have had that experience and they're here and they're trying to raise the alarm. And unfortunately, there aren't enough people who are willing to...
That's what I do in Israel. That's why I speak up there and tell the Israelis that are willing to listen, and I do that in Hebrew, that, you guys, this is clamping down on you and you're not paying attention. All these new regulations and rules that are being put in place because we have a war now and it's another excuse an emergency under emergency to put all these new regulations to forbid you from your freedom of speech and your private property, and now there's a biometric database that they're putting together, and then there's a genetic database that they're putting together, and then they're selling our data to pharma companies, and there's no end to it, and they continue on from 2020. They're in some kind of rally to just sell us off to the highest bidder.
Total control.
And people are still in Israel. People look at me and say, you're crazy, and I don't give a They can think whatever
I
they
understand.
want.
Right.
But I'll still say it because
Right.
you're either blind or willfully blind
Yeah.
or ignorant.
It's willful ignorance, and it's so frustrating.
And again, it's not like both you and I are trying to despair anyone or
No.
show you the doom and gloom.
Right.
In fact, we're here because we're trying to show you that there's another way out.
Right. Yeah.
So what is your message then? Message of hope around that?
Well, Bitcoin is hope as long as we protect Bitcoin, right? And I think the way that we protect anything is to be honest about it. The dishonesty is ultimately what allows them to maintain control.
And when you're saying being honest about it, do you mean honest about Bitcoin or honest in general? Okay.
Everything, right? All of the corruption is enabled, the compliance is enabled by silence. If you are not willing to speak up, you're complying. And a lot of people are still scared to speak up. But if everyone just started being honest about what they think and what they feel and what they're worried, everything, just be honest about everything, so much of this shit would end overnight.
Yes.
The mandates, the regulation, like all of this, if everybody just had the courage to say, I am not okay with this, we could affect so much change.
I'm not okay with a CBDC that is going to program what I can use my money for and
Right.
when and how much.
Right.
I'm not okay with that.
No.
If only people said that, that
Right.
would be really nice for what's coming down. You wrote, defending non-KYC Bitcoin is actually the only thing that matters in Bitcoin right now. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. So this is a hot debate in Bitcoin. Privacy is a hot topic. And I have to admit, I was pretty ignorant to the privacy concerns. I mean, obviously, in some ways, the visibility of Bitcoin transactions is a feature. Because if you're talking global settlements and government funding and all of that, having visibility into all of that, I mean, that's what we want, right? Like, audit it. But when we're talking about our money, it gets a little bit different. And we have to be careful that we don't allow too much surveillance. So one of the things that I had to do when I got my role, because of the way that we are regulated, is I had to do an AML KYC training.
AML is anti-money laundering, for those of you who don't know. KYC is know your customer. It's the identification process.
That's right. And all of these alphabet regulations, I didn't know anything about them, and I didn't want to know, right? Ignorance is bliss, but it's not good. And my concern is the amount of anti-money laundering rules and regulations that have already been applied to the industry, and the fact that when we KYC the sats that we're buying, we're attaching our information to those sats, and therefore all future transactions. Now I get a lot of heat for this. People want to say Bitcoin doesn't care, but again, this sort of comes back to you're subject to the rules and regulations of the government that you live under. And those governments are very threatened, and when people feel threatened, they increase their power and they claw at you. And we have to be really careful what we agree to, So all of the on-ramps, I don't know where you buy your Bitcoin. You convert your fiat into Bitcoin, right? Well, in most cases, certainly in the United States, when you're doing that, you're KYCing. And when you're KYCing your Bitcoin, there are ways in the future to obfuscate that, but they've already made some of those ways illegal. And of course, you can do them anyway, but you have to be willing to go to jail if they start enforcing that more significantly. If all of our Bitcoin is KYC'd, then they know everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
And if they make it illegal to sort of un-KYC it.
Yeah, and that's something we should think about, and I
Right.
think the industry definitely should look at.
Right.
Innovating around privacy. And in October last year, Edward Snowden was talking about that in Amsterdam. He was saying, I've been blowing that horn for a long time, and people don't get how critical that is. And I think we're at that point.
We are at that point, and I think a lot of people who have not been subject to the training involved in that surveillance, there's a lot of people, they have no idea that it's going on. And so if you don't know what's happening, it's really hard to be overly concerned about something, right?
Yeah, but I think just by saying that, we raised awareness for the topic, and you should go and do your research.
Go and do your research. AML laws, if you look at a lot of the people that have been put in jail, it's all done under the guise of anti-money laundering. And so they're going to use that for more and more regulation and restriction and,
And obviously we're not calling anyone to break the law.
Absolutely not.
Right?
Right.
But we're just making people aware of that really, really important topic.
Yeah, we're not doing anything criminal, so we don't want to be labeled criminals.
Exactly. I'm just going to end with one cool question. What would you like to see happen in the world, and how do you think this can happen?
I would like to see more free countries or free regions arise. And I would also like to see, I want to go back to that time period when the internet was early and we interacted with people in real life. I want to go back to that. Hi. The Bitcoin events are so incredible because it's it's real. I'm here with you. I can hug you, and we need more of that. We need more real life. Bring community back, bring real friendships and connections and communities. I think that's lacking in a lot of people's lives. And
I agree.
It's sad.
We're so addicted to these things, and we don't realize how much it takes over.
Yeah.
So free cities, free communities, free people.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's end on that note. We want freedom.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Michelle, thank you so much for being who you are, being courageous, speaking up. I love your work. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. You too.
Thank
it's so
you.
important. I'm so glad always to see anyone you're talking to. I'm like, I know this is a good person.
Yes, I select them. I handpick them like that. So yeah, it's important for me that my guests will be people that are not compromising truth or freedom for anything else. So thank you for being that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for also being that too.
Yes. We need more of that.
I know, we
Come
need
on,
more.
people.
How do we recruit them? Speak up, everyone.
Where do people follow you? Where is the best?
Just on Twitter. It's the only place that I am.
Nostr, no?
I'm on Nostr, yes.
Okay,
and I love, I'm rooting for Nostr. I'm there. We need a little more development. There needs to be an economic model for Nostr too. That's a whole different thing. But I am on Nostr. I'm not super active there.
Okay, well, it's early days.
Yeah,
so
early
Nostr
days.
and Twitter.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
Enjoy the show.
Thank you.